Asia from CrochetEverAfter.com, and right now I'm going to show you how to half double crochet when you're working in spirals. So if you don't like the look of a join when you're working in the round, this is going to show you how to do it all without the joins. Alright, I'm going to start all the way at the beginning of my first round of half double crochet before I show you how to work in spirals, just so you can see another alternative to the magic adjustable loop for creating a pretty small hole at the beginning of your round. Oops, upside down here. So I'm starting with my slip knot, and I always put my tail down so I can yarn over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 3 chains. So instead of a magic adjustable loop, I am going to work into a chain. So I make 3 because I want the 2 of them to count as one of my half double crochets, and the third one is going to be my ring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to half double crochet 7 times into the 3rd chain from my hook. And what that does is it puts so many half double crochets into one chain that it creates a round. And you can count your your chain 2 as a half double crochet, or you can do 8 half double crochets and not count that chain 2. It's up to you, because after this round you won't be chaining anymore because you're working in spirals. So as you do this, it can get a little difficult to insert your hook sometimes, but that also will help you create a smaller ring. So to give you almost the effect of the magic adjustable loop without having to hassle with the loop that likes to flip around. Let's see how many I have so far. I always count backwards from my hook. It's easier for me than trying to figure out my chains over here. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I have my chain 2 for 7. So I'm going to do one more. And now I've got my first round, and you can see that rounded out very nicely. Now I'm going to begin working in a spiral. So what I need to do is do another half double crochet, but I'm going to put it into my chain 2. So instead of joining my round with a slip stitch, I'm just going to go ahead and half double crochet in there. And because I want a flat disc, I don't want it to curl up just yet, I'm going to half double crochet 2 times in every stitch around. Because to get a flat disc in half double crochet, you have to put 8 stitches into each round. You have to increase by 8 stitches every time. And that's because of the size of the stitch. 8 is what's needed to create that flat disc. So I just did 1, and you'll see it just kind of jumped up a little. So let me do that one more time so you can see that a little bit better. So I find the top of my chain 2. Here's my first chain where that loop is, and this is my second chain. So I yarn over and insert my hook into that. And I like to catch my chain and the bottom bump of my chain so I don't get, if I just catch this one loop, sometimes, get the whole loop there, sometimes when you pull up you'll have a big hole. So if you catch the loop and the bottom bump, and you get both of those, it doesn't give you as big a hole. It's a little bit smaller and less visible. So I yarn over and I do my half double crochet. Now because I'm making a flat disc, I'm going to have to increase into each stitch. So I'm going to do 2 half double crochets in every stitch. And this one's nice and visible, nice and easy to see, so I'm going to do another half double in there. And before I get going on the rest of this round, I want to put in a stitch marker. So grab my stitch marker. And I'm going to put it into the first stitch of my round, which was that first half double. And what this does is it allows me the ability to count less. If I was working without the stitch marker, trying to keep track of my rounds, I would have to count up to 16, because I'm going to make 16 stitches into this round. With the stitch marker, if I put my work down and get up, I can easily find the beginning of my round that I'm working, and I can also see how many stitches that I've made so far. Some people put the stitch marker in the last stitch of the previous round. It's up to you where you put it. I like to put it in the first stitch of the round that I'm working, but keep it consistent so that you don't forget. Now the next stitch sometimes is a little difficult to see. Sometimes you think you're going to go over here, but you're actually going right in that little tiny one. So I'm going to bring it a little closer so you can see it. Right in this stitch here. That is your second stitch. If you're a little confused on where to insert your hook, because sometimes with the chain too it'll make it difficult to see that first stitch, count backwards from your previous round. So here's my previous ending stitch. So I can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. So I've only worked into one stitch, so I need to work into this 7th stitch. So that's a little trick if you get confused, or if you finish your whole round and you only have 14 stitches, you probably missed that awkward looking stitch there. So I keep on doing 2 half double crochets in every stitch around. I'll slow it down a little so you can see this next one. So I find my next stitch. I can always turn it sideways and find the V. This is an upside down V, so I can turn it that way if I want to find the right side V. And I yarn over, insert my hook under both loops. It's always both loops unless your pattern tells you otherwise. Pull up my loop and pull through. And I always say layover when you do that first yarn over, because you're just kind of laying it over. And I turn my hook and I catch it and I pull it through, and I have 3 loops. Yarn over, turn your hook down so you don't get caught. That's my little trick to keep from getting caught on your stitches, is to point your hook down so that it'll slide easily through your loops. So I keep on going, and after the first round, working in the spiral is a lot easier. There's not such a jump that you had from the first round, which I'll show you right after I finish these last 4 stitches. Oops, split that. And 2 more to finish the round. And make sure that if you're not sure you have enough, just stop and count. I don't count the stitches within here because sometimes that can get a little difficult to count. I always count the V's. I turn it sideways and I count backwards from the last one I made. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So I know I did the right amount. And as you can see, instead of having to jump up to get to my next stitch, I'm actually going a little bit down. It's actually sticking up a little bit. So it's very easy to work into that next stitch. Now to keep my round flat, I'd have to increase by 8 stitches again. So I don't do 2 in every single stitch around because that would quadruple it. I do 2 in my first stitch and then 1 half double in the next stitch. And that's the pattern that I need to keep all the way around. So I yarn over and I'm going to increase by working 2 half double crochets in that first stitch, which is nice and big and easy to see. Then I insert my stitch marker back so I don't have to count as much. So what I mean by not counting as much is if I was without this stitch marker, I would have to count up to 8 times 3 is 24 stitches. So I'd have to count up to 24 and make sure that I'm putting my increases in the right spot. With that stitch marker, I only have to count up to 3 because I'm doing groups of 3 stitches for this round. I'm doing 2 increases, and my third stitch is just a regular half double crochet in the next stitch. So I'm doing 1 and then 2 back in that same stitch, and then 3 in the next stitch. And I like to put my increase at the beginning of my sets. So instead of, some designers will have you single crochet first and then the next stitch will be your increase where it's 2 half double crochets. I like to put it first, that way I can do that counting very easily, because no matter what round I'm on, if I'm increasing, I'm always going to have 1, 2 into the first stitch, and then the second part is going to change. So on my next row, because I'm increasing another 8, I'll have 2 in the first stitch, and then I'll have 1 half double crochet into the next 2 stitches. So it'll be 1, 2, and then 3 and 4. And then on the next row it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So by putting it at the beginning of my set of stitches, it never changes. If I put it at the end, my next row, I'll have to remember to do 1, 2, and then 3, 4 in the last stitch. And it's going to change every round. So that's kind of the method to my madness for designing, is putting the increase in the front, so that if you are watching TV while you're crocheting, which many of us do, it's a lot easier to keep track of your counting when it's that way, because you're only going to have 1, 2. You always remember to increase on your 1, 2, and then the next part will just be 3. So hopefully that is making sense. I'm kind of a math buff, so that's kind of easy for me. But I continue around and around, and each round, if I want it flat, I'm going to increase by 8 stitches. When I want this to start curving up, if I'm making a beanie or amigurumi, usually you don't do that in half double crochet, you usually do it in single crochet, but maybe a bowl, that's when I'm just going to start half double crocheting in every stitch around. So I can easily turn this into a bowl, because this would be a really small beanie, maybe for a doll. You can always do that. But I'm going to finish off these increases real quick, and I'll start turning it into a bowl. So as you can see, I can easily talk while doing these stitches because I'm only counting to 3. So that's easy to do in my head while I'm talking. Oops. Instead of having to count all the way up to 24. So now I can just go ahead and start half double crocheting in every stitch around. And the stitch marker, I just made 2, so I'm going to stop and put in my stitch marker. I always seem to make 2 before I put in my stitch marker, no matter what round I'm on. Now my stitch marker really comes in handy because I don't have to count at all. Since I'm doing half double crochets in every single stitch around, I just keep going and going until I hit my stitch marker again. And then I'm going to take it out and start my new round and put it back in again. And by doing stitches in each stitch around and not increasing at all, I'm going to start to cup up or bowl up. So I'm making a little tiny bowl here. So I just keep on working around, and you can see that it's starting to curve already. You can see how it's starting to get that curve. And if I keep on working the 24 stitches around, it'll just keep on with this same size. So what you can do if you need to find a certain, if you want to make a certain circumference, this is your math lesson. You're going to measure across. Measure from one side to the other. So get your measuring tape out, measure the widest part. Well, I guess it's all the same size since it's a circle. Measure across, and then multiply it by 3.14, which you may remember is pi. And by doing that, that's going to give you the total circumference of your circle. So if you want to make a certain size bowl or a certain size beanie, so if you have a 22-inch head, keep going with your half double crochets in a flat disc until you get the proper distance across. So if you have a 22-inch head, divide it by 3.14, and it's going to be 7 something. So you're going to keep on working until you have 7 inches and point something across, and then start half double crocheting just around and around. It's going to cup up, and it's going to give you that 22 inches all the way around. So that's one way to make a really quick beanie or bowl or anything that you want a certain size circumference. And circumference just means all the way around the outside. So that is your math lesson for the day, and that is how you work half double crochet in spirals.